waiting room at the moment.
All right. Good morning, everybody. We're doing this a little bit different this morning because my laptop decided to not charge. And so I didn't want to run out of power in the middle of the meeting. So Alexa is going to co-share with me, and she's going to drive and moderate. So welcome, everybody. You want to go ahead and put the PowerPoint up, Alexa?
Absolutely. All right.
And I can't see you all, so Alexa's going to keep track if you raise your hand. If you haven't done a class with me before, I really enjoy talking to everyone. I enjoy having a very interactive. I can talk a lot, so I will try to keep track of time. If Alexa, if you could kind of keep track of time too, and let me know like 15 minutes before the end so that we have time for questions, or I can keep talking if no one has something. So I would like to thank Autism Tree Project Foundation for hosting this. I am Michelle McGowan with McGowan Advocacy Group, and I'm a special education advocate. Next slide. I am a ATPF parent and non-lawyer special education advocate. So any of the information that I'm giving you today is not to be taken as legal advice, but rather I have been a parent and a special education advocate for 12 years. I have 2 sons on the autism spectrum, and I have done training through UCSD School of Law, William and Mary School of Law, and I just took a year-long training through COPA. And while we're talking about training, I wanted to tell you guys about this amazing opportunity. It's San Joaquin. Can you see that? Alexa, does that fit in the screen there? Oh, I can't hear you.
Put it up closer to the screen a little bit more.
Okay. So it's on my website too, but I wanted to mention it, that it is the San Joaquin College of Law Bree Center, Bree Clinic rather, and it's free classes on special education, advocacy, and law. And it's going to be every Tuesday evening from 6:30 to 9:30 starting August 18th through October 27th. And it talks about individual IEPs, referrals for evaluation, individualized transition plans, educational placements, proactive advocacy, student discipline, education before kindergarten, dispute resolution, and protocols and safeguards rather. And so it's free. They're going to be all online, and it's a great group. So I just wanted to give you some information about that. And you can find a link to that on my Facebook page. And there's my website, a lot of the information that we're going to talk about in links, and some more information that you might find useful is on McGowanadvocacy.com. There's my email address and my phone number. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to support you. Today, we're here to talk about executive functioning skills throughout the school year and how we can bolster them and how we can build them. I don't know how I see everybody. Let me see if I can see. Okay, so most of you don't have, you aren't video. Okay, so I'm not even going to worry about that. It's hard to sit here and talk to a screen for, you know, by yourself without any facial interactions. So, but Alexa's watching to see if you guys raise your hands. So does everybody know what executive functioning is? It's kind of a new buzzword and kind of a new thing they're looking at. Is anyone not aware of what executive functioning is? Please raise your hand. Everybody's good? Awesome. Okay, next slide, please, Alexa. So executive functioning is that frontal cortex of our brain that organizes everything else that's going on and keeps us on track. We can look at a project, break it down into what needs to go, how much time is the overall project going to take, what are each of the steps that we need to do, and how does that all culminate and come together at the end to make us successful. And that's what's happening in a neurotypical brain. Often in our kiddos, It looks more like this, where there's 100 different things firing all at the same time, and in our conversations with our kiddos is, you know, a little bit scattered, and they jump from one subject to the next subject, and it's hard to keep them on track. Whoops. And it's difficult. Like this morning in talking to James, and I was trying to get him ready to get everybody have their lunch and get off to do what they were going to do next. And my son James is 8 years old. He is on the autism spectrum. He also has trauma and neglect. Did you have a question? I see somebody else popped up there. No? Okay, somebody has their mic unmuted. See who that is.
Michelle, I'm just gonna mute everybody.
Okay, thanks. And so, James, I was trying to get James.
Michelle, can you unmute yourself really quickly?
To speak. Okay. Can you hear me now?
All good.
Awesome. Okay. So, in talking to him and telling Buddy, I got 2 minutes left, you got to get going. After he ate breakfast, then he told me he was a little bit upset, and he said, you know, I ate like a squirrel, I ate like a chipmunk, and I ate it really super fast, and I didn't hold it in my cheeks, and it really had nothing to do with what we were talking about or what we needed to do. And so their brain is firing and making all these different connections, pulling from things that they feel are relevant in their way of expressing themselves. We need to learn how to help them express themselves in a way that everyone can understand what it is that they mean. Okay. So here's some learning resources for parents. Executive functioning has 7 aspects of it, or 6 aspects of it that cover the whole thing. And it's bringing them all into focus and helping them move from one step to the next step to the next step and fulfill that task. And this is where a lot of our kiddos are having issues in school and being able to keep up with their peers, being able to do the things that are expected of them, because there's an expectation not just of academically being able to keep up with the tasks, but you know, organizing your work, turning it in when you're supposed to. Often kids that are having executive functioning issues, it's taking them longer to process that I need to get into my backpack, take out my homework, pass it to the person behind me or the person in front of me and all that. And by the time that they have worked through all of that, found it in their disorganized backpack, then everybody has already passed theirs forward, so they just don't pass their homework forward. And so a lot of homework that they got done doesn't get turned in. So we need to talk to teachers in our IEP meeting and make sure that we're setting up things to make them successful. That maybe that there's a basket that they drop it into. Maybe we color coordinate things with paper clips that are color coordinated for each of their classes that are in their binder. You know, you got a pink one for English and a blue one for science and a green one for social studies, whatever it is that helps them to easily access that and starts building that executive functioning. Executive functioning starts at birth, and it's that learning when I cry, I get my needs met. When I look at you, we interact. When I coo, you coo back to me. Well, a lot of those things are not naturally happening for our kiddos. You know, some people feel that their child was developing in a normal trajectory until a certain age and then lost some of those skills. And others, like my youngest son, and both of my sons or all 3 of my sons are adopted, but James and Aaron are biological siblings, and they came to me when James was 2.5 and Aaron was 3 months old with severe neglect and abuse. James had been strapped into a high chair and placed in a 3-by-3-foot cave-like enclosure for the first 2.5 years. So he tested at a 2-month understanding of language and didn't even know his name. So he had some very major trauma and deprivation. And we've made a lot of skills up in those kinds of areas, but that executive functioning, it will be delayed, and we work on it a lot about what could have you have done differently, and helping them to think through the process instead of being agitated by them not being able to do this. Walk them through the process that you use in order to get to those places. Does anybody have a question? No? Okay. So instead of getting frustrated that I've told you 550,000 times to put your backpack on the hanger when we walk into the room, it's more like, what are we supposed to do? What's the first step when we get in? And we have to do that sometimes dozens and dozens, and if not hundreds of times. But it's shoes off outside, backpack hangs up by the front door, and then we go on to whatever else we do. And it's constantly reinforcing that. When they start getting it on their own, pull back from that reinforcement and start positively praising them for, wow, you took your shoes off. Really great job, guys. You hung up your backpack. High five. Wow. And for my kiddos, they love it when I say, did you hang up your backpack all by yourself? Because now I think you're becoming a big boy, and I'm not sure I'm ready for you to be a big boy yet. And they get a big kick out of that. I do joke with them a lot, and I am a very sarcastic person by nature, and I try to get them to understand that not everything is black and white. All right, so we'll move on to the first function, which is action. And that's where a lot of our kiddos stall, is that, oh my gosh, this project, whether it be a homework project, cleaning my room, putting my toys away, wherever they are on the developmental scale, that we're giving them those tasks to do. And we need to really make sure that we are. Oftentimes with kiddos that have disabilities, and a lot of my clients, I'm having to remind them all the time, don't do too much for them. They need to be able to fail and learn from their mistakes and learn from the processes and then find success. And I often tell my clients that the first time that they are not successful at it, say, I think you can find a different way. That didn't seem to work. Can we find a different way to do that? And maybe I walk them through that, but I don't do it for them. I let them think of a different way. And I always say, but I'm right here to help you if you need it. If I see them struggling, I say, if you need help, let me know. But I think you got this. I think you can figure this out. And it helps with that executive functioning and teaching them to start thinking about different possibilities, different solutions. How do I get from point A to point B? How do I do this? Instead of just freezing at that place where they become overwhelmed and waiting for somebody to intervene on their behalf. Does that make sense? So action is figuring out what the whole task is, chunking it down into pieces that are more manageable, understanding what is the first step that I need to do. And so when I'm trying to get my kids to clean their room, I don't just say, clean your room. I have 3 boys, a 6-year-old, an 8-year-old, and a 9-year-old. And when I say clean your room, I say, Aaron, you pick up all of the stuffed animals. James, you pick up all of the clothes that are on the floor, and Alex, you pick up all of the blankets. That helps them to chunk it down and to see what they're responsible for and to find those solutions on how to do that. Then they come back and they say, okay, I'm done with that. What is left? And after doing that for about 3 months, we got to the point where I could say, all right, you guys decide. You guys look at this task, break it down, make responsibilities and roles and goals for each of you. Who's going to do what? You guys now be responsible for working that out. And they have done really well considering their age. You know, one likes to vacuum, so he gets the vacuum cleaner out, and the other one likes to make his bed and organize the stuffed animals on his bed, and they each take a role and break those down into parts. When it comes to education, we need to look at those things as well. When you're looking at a math page that seems overwhelming, you know, ask them, what would make this easier for you? And for some kiddos, I have, you can just use a manila folder, but you just cut out one little square so that they only see one problem at a time. And you just do one problem at a time and slide it over so that all that can be seen in that, and you have to kind of put it in the middle so that, you know, when you're moving it, but move it across the top, and then they can see, and then they see the progress. I've done 10 things, not I haven't done 30. And so that helps them to get over that, those stumbling blocks, and learn where to start. And then as I start, what are the next steps? How, and without getting overwhelmed by the whole of the project. Does anybody, is this a particular issue for anyone's kids? Is that first step of getting started? Yes. Does anybody have any questions or want to share something that they've been successful with? Good morning.
Yeah, I can share.
Awesome. Thank you.
We started using a website because it's like one problem at a time. So I forget exactly what it's called right now, but it's been really helpful. Just like one, and then it rewards her, and then she does another one, and it rewards her.
And how old is your child?
She's 5.
Okay. So yeah. Is it like ABC Mouse, or is it something at the school?
I think it's called Adapted Mind.
Okay.
Adapted Mind. Is that it?
You got the thumbs up, Mom.
Yeah, that's it. And they have little like monsters that they can build characters, and they get to, you know, win like additional clothing for them and stuff like that.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, but she's kind of advanced in math, so it starts really with like first grade level. So she's like not ready for the reading part or any of that yet. She's going into kindergarten, but so it's probably better for like a little bit older kids.
Yeah, and I found with my kiddos, because language was a huge deficit for my kiddos, and playing correctly, not just because of the autism, but coupled with that severe deprivation, right? So they were more on the higher end of the spectrum of nonverbal and disjointed. And I found even with that, James and Aaron, in the beginning, they had occupational therapy, speech therapy, infant educator, ABA therapy, 3 hours a day. That 2.5 years missed of James's life. And I found that really what benefited them the most, and this is a parent choice, was watching videos. It took that human element out of it, and that human interaction that he found so overwhelming, and it let him watch. And the thing that they watched over and over and over is, I think it's Ryan's Toys. Is that what it is? And it's this little boy who plays and does these toy reviews, and he plays with toys, and they watched him over and over and over and over and over of this other kid playing with toys, and it really taught them the appropriate way to play with toys. And I saw, even with all of the other interventions, I saw an exponentially large growth when I took out that human element. And there's a lot of studies going on right now on the East Coast at the Boston Medical Center, I believe it is, that are looking at doing videos. And with this, sorry, my phone just rang. With this, with COVID, what I've found for a lot of my clients, that their kids are having success the Zoom meetings are really overwhelming. And with that executive functioning, you've got all of these things, all of these moving parts, and you're looking in somebody's house and their brother's running through and their mom's maybe in the background cooking. Whatever's going on is distracting them and they cannot focus on the lesson at hand. And so we've had occupational therapists, speech therapists, and even classroom teachers give them pre-recorded lesson plans. And sometimes they're finding them on YouTube, and sometimes they're creating them themselves, but then they can chunk down that. And so if the child needs 5 minutes and then needs a break, and then they can come back to it, but they can go over it and over and over. And then this is also a really good resource for parents when they don't know what to do, and I need 15 minutes to go take a shower. Click on one of these lesson plans and let your kid watch through it again, especially if they end up having favorite ones. So it's been really great for parents. It takes some of the pressure off of them to teach, and it allows the student to interact with the lesson plan over and over and over. So you get that pre-teach, teach, and reteach, and that's what our kiddos need. So that has been very beneficial. And if you don't have that in your IEP and you're coming up, and it looks like from everything that I'm hearing, and then there's 43 distinct school districts in San Diego County alone. But what I'm hearing from most of them is that there's going to be some kind of hybrid. They're going to definitely have all online learners, and then they're going to have some kind of hybrid between partially in class and partially at home learning. I haven't heard anyone say that they're going back to school full time. Has any one school district said that that's what they're envisioning come August?
Okay. I have only heard from ours that they sent out a questionnaire and asked what we would prefer, and going full back was one of the options, but that's as close as I've heard. And yeah, I've discussed with ABA if they don't do that, what we're going to do, because it obviously the Zoom calls are not really working.
Right. And so I would also reach out to the regional center. The regional center is expanding, in some cases, the support, because before ABA was not allowed to support in an academic way. They were not supposed to help with homework, yada, yada, yada. That was part of the rules from the regional center, but they are expanding that to provide support. And so a lot of people are trying to align their ABA hours along with those Zoom sessions. But it works much better if you have those pre-recorded, and then they can do that whenever, because you may not be able to get your ABA provider to come at 9 o'clock in the morning when that Zoom session is in session, right? So if you can, even if you can record it yourself, and there's going to be some kind of legalities about that, because privacy and videoing and recording and da-di-da-di-da. But if the teacher go ahead and records herself and then sends it off to you. So I would certainly talk to the school about having that happen, and then coupling it with ABA to give you that extra support and to walk through all of those things. All right, next slide. So after action comes memory. And this can be another challenge for our kiddos. It's long-term memory, short-term memory, and working memory. And how do those all work together? And it's executive functioning that's overseeing all these processes in the brain and is coordinating them together. And pulling from the long-term memory, pulling from the short-term memory, and then that working memory in what I'm doing at the moment. And a lot of times our kiddos have either difficulty with short-term memory or a long-term memory. And if it's a long-term memory, they need to be pre-taught, taught, and retaught in order for it to jump from the short-term memory into the long-term memory. So if your child is like my son, he remembers everything. He'll see a picture of himself when he was my foster son, and his name was a different name. When he got adopted, he wanted to change his name to James, and he'll see that picture of him when he was before we called him James, and he will remember, and he will say, oh, that's when I was Riley. That's when I didn't live with you. And he was 2.5. So he really shouldn't remember those things, but he does. So his long-term memory is excellent. His short-term memory of where did I put down that pencil that I have to do my homework now? Where did I put my cup, my water bottle? Where did I put that toy that I really want, is something that he struggles with very, very hard. And sometimes when our kiddos don't have the basic underlying skills or understand, for my son anyway, I can start seeing his skills and his coping skills start to implode when he comes up against something like that. When his short-term memory and he can't remember where he put something, he can't find his coat in the morning, he can't find his shoes, then it just implodes and everything. And it's almost like a house of cards that you can see things start falling and you can see it all start come tumbling down. So does anybody have any tricks or things that have worked particularly well for them in helping their child build their long-term, short-term, or working memory that they would like to share with the group? No? Okay, then let's move forward. So we need to make sure that we're doing that pre-teaching, teach, and reteach. And that's really what ABA therapy is doing, is they're making them go over it. You know, sometimes James would have to do the same thing 45 times before it became something that he could independently replicate. All right, next slide. And then we come with the emotions. And emotions are really hard for our kiddos. If you haven't taken a class with me, or if you have taken a class with me before, you know that I really like this woman, and she has a Facebook page and she does videos, and her name is Agni Adi, A-U-T-I-E, like auntie without the N, Agni Adi. And she is a woman and an activist in her 30s. And she has beautiful blue hair, and she is on the autism spectrum, as is her son. And she talks about emotions and how people with autism on the spectrum feel them physically in a way that neurotypical people don't. And she's very great at explaining things that really helped me understand what my son is going through. Why are you crying? Why are you crying? Because you can't find your sock. That's, that's nothing to cry about. But for him, the emotions are overwhelming, and they come out in tears, and big crocodile tears that could flood a room like an anime character, like Alice in Wonderland. We're all floating because there's so many tears over a lost sock. Emotions play a really big part in executive functioning, because then it becomes habit. Right? And we see this in our kiddos in particular, because that habit now becomes part of my son's script. And I know that, oh goodness, if we let this go too far down this, then every time. So when James was first being taught to brush his teeth, I was trying to help him, and he looked at me one time and said, "Can I spit now?" And I said, "Yes." And from then on, for about 18 months, he had to ask me if he could spit first before he would finish brushing his teeth. And so it became very hard to unlearn that once it became a habit. I can't, Alexa, can you read that question?
What is the full name of the lady you mentioned related to emotion? Agni.
Adi. So Agni and then A-U-T-I-E. And you can find her on Facebook or YouTube. The presentation that I gave last month has a lot of links to these, so you can reach out to Rebecca or Alexa and ask them for the PowerPoint that I did last week, or last month rather. And all of the videos that I'm referring to are embedded in that PowerPoint, just like the video. There's going to be some links in this one as well. All right, so then these interactions and these fears of Last time I got out of the car, some other car came next to me and scared me. Now becomes overwhelming to be able to get out of the car without holding your hand. Impulse control. You know, we were walking in our neighborhood, and our neighborhood is an older neighborhood in La Mesa, and it does not have sidewalks in the majority. Yes, that's it. And our neighborhood does not have sidewalks, right? And so this was when coronavirus first started, and this was new for us because we didn't typically walk out into the neighborhood because of not having sidewalks. But we started to do this, and we were doing fairly well, and I thought James was getting the hang of it, but a car came around the corner and he ran out in front of the car and then ran back and then tried to come across the street, even though I was telling him, stay where you are, stay where you are. He could not control that impulse. He, in my neighbor's most amazing, loving, I am a single mom of 3 boys, and sometimes I think my neighbors think I don't know how to be a mom to boys, which is silly because I have 4 brothers. But anyway, he decided without asking me to take the training wheels off of James's bike. Now, I knew that James could ride a 2-wheeler without training wheels, but while he can physically do that, all of the steps to navigating it, staying upright, getting overwhelmed with emotions and everything is something that he can't do. And the training wheels kept him slow enough to keep him safe so that I didn't have to walk right by him while he's riding this bike, right? But my neighbor went ahead and took the training wheels off of both of my younger son's bikes. And then I can't really put them back on, right? So James decides to ride down a hill that has a blind corner on it where cars are coming up a hill, and come down this driveway, and the intersection here, you cannot see the cars because there's a row of bushes and trees. And my other son, who's a neurotypical son, navigates that all the time. So James decided, because he's almost the same age as Alex, that he could do the same thing, and he ran into a car. And luckily, that car was a parked car, and it was my sister's son, my nephew's car. But James came in, and he was very upset, and he wasn't hurt, but, you know, screaming and crying. But he said, Mom, I couldn't remember how to do the brakes. And it's that kind of emotion that overwhelms their ability to access those other things. And that's where the executive functioning is coming in. And the executive function should kick in and say, this is what you need to do. This is how you need to do it. And follow through with them. And so those are the things that we have to talk to them about. What do you do if? What happens when you do this? What happens when you do that? And help them walk through that. And we can build that executive functioning in them, but it has to be expressly taught for many children on the spectrum. Anybody have anything that they would like to share about this? Questions? All righty. Efforts. Now, this is what we talked about a little bit in the beginning, and it's that planning, the attention, the cognitive flexibility, and understanding that there's more than one way. When my kids were littler and they were just learning things, I would mess them up on purpose. I would say, James, go get your jammies on. And he would say, do you mean pajamas? And I said, no, I mean jammies. Sometimes we can call them jammies. Sometimes we call them PJs. Sometimes we call them pajamas, but it's all the same thing. He did not like that. He would correct me all the time. James, go put your pants on. Do you mean shorts? Well, you can wear shorts if you want. You can wear long pants if you want. You can wear anything that covers up your underwear on the bottom half of your body, and we can call it pants. And trying to get him out of that black and white thinking and understanding that there's more ways to talk about this. That there's lots of ways that people are going to talk about this. There's lots of things that we can talk about. A big one for him because of the deprivation and because of the lack of food was meals. And, you know, if he woke up late and it was towards more of a brunch time than it was a breakfast time, and we went ahead and had lunch, he could not move past the day unless we had breakfast. So we had to, you know, and sometimes he still does that. And I'll be like, buddy, you didn't get up till 10:30 this morning. So we just went ahead and had lunch because we had to go somewhere and do something. So we had a bigger meal, we had lunch, and then we went. And then when we got back, we had a snack, and then we had dinner. And for 3 days, he kept saying, you know, the other day I didn't have lunch. So we had, or breakfast rather. So we had to have 2 breakfasts one day to make up for not having breakfast 3 days ago, before he was able to move on with that thought process and let go of it. So a lot of this is autonomy. And it's letting those children make those mistakes, figuring out what they're doing, figuring out how they're doing it, figuring out that if they fail, it's not the end of the world. We all fail. We all make mistakes. And I point out when I make a mistake, oops, I burned the muffins. Oh my goodness. I guess I just need to start over. And I talk, as you can tell, a lot. And I talk to my kids a lot. And, you know, when James first came to me, they said, just leave him in the corner. He's never going to talk. He's not going to walk. He's not going to be potty trained. The amount of deprivation and abuse that he sustained, don't expect much from him. And I just kept talking to him. And I figured that it couldn't do me any harm to talk to him.
Sorry, I'm on a call.
I couldn't do me any harm for me to talk to him as if he understood me, even if he didn't. And to give him the opportunity to try new foods, even if he told me he didn't like them. And give him the opportunity to go places, even though the last time we went there, it was a nightmare. And I'm a single mom, and I'm going with a 18-month-old and 2 3-year-olds to SeaWorld while they're screaming. And I am clearly a very fair-skinned white woman, and my children are Filipino. James and Aaron are Filipino, and Alex is Hispanic. So I'm walking through SeaWorld while they're screaming, snot running down their face, drool down their mouths, screaming incessantly. And we're just walking along, and I'm drinking a mojito going, we're going to get through this. We're going to be fine. Next time we come, if we stay until we get through this meltdown and they get to the other side and they know that they're okay, we've made it through that, and they can see that I survived that. Maybe next time we come, it won't be a 3-hour meltdown. It'll just be a 2.5-hour meltdown. And each time it got better. But there was times I had one under an arm, one on my shoulder, and one dragging them out by their legs, screaming, I don't want to go with you. And had I been a man, I'm pretty sure the cops at the entrance would have stopped me. But I'm pretty sure also that everybody looked and said, nobody would be stealing those kids. No, they would just let them go because they are screaming. And so, you know, sometimes we just have to look at those situations and laugh and keep giving our kids the opportunity to go places and stuff. And that's what I love. And I am not a fan of support groups, because I often find that they're not very supportive. There's just a lot of people sitting around talking about trying to one-up themselves on whose day was worse. And that's why I am a volunteer for Autism Tree, because it's not that way. It is truly supportive, and they have these programs that are free. Take advantage of them. We go to the football, and I don't know if we're having these things this year because of COVID and all that. The football players are so amazing. We've gone to dinner with our guys. Each of our guys, even my neurotypical child, has one. They text us. They're amazing young men, super duper role models. The baseball players, the same. We haven't gone to the soccer because we had other things going on. But please, it is so important to keep, and in the beginning I didn't want to, and Lisa, and I met Lisa through work. I used to work at the San Diego International Airport in the customer service department, and the Autism Tree was doing a project to bring families to come and tour the airport in conjunction with JetBlue. And I was assigned this task, and I met them and I fell in love with Lisa. She's amazing, and she would encourage me all the time to bring your kids, and I'd be like, oh, but you don't have any idea the kind of nightmare this is going to be. Oh, we don't care. And it's true. You go and you sit in the stands, and everyone there is from the Autism Tree, and the kids can do whatever they want and nobody cares. It's phenomenal. It gets you out to do something that's fun and exciting, and I think it costs $5 for adults, and kids are free. It's amazing, and the kids learn so much about getting out there and getting through those fears and overcoming those anxieties and things. It's fantastic, and it gives them that opportunity to have autonomy. Nobody cares if they're running up and down or through the aisles. All the parents got it. They understand. They've been there. And so it's fantastic. And so I would really encourage you to take advantage of those things. How are we doing on time, Alexa?
We are at 41.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Next. Focus. So this is a big deal. And there's a short video that I think we're going to skip. And well, do you think we have time for it? we have 2 minutes, right?
How many slides? Yeah.
Okay. So you guys need to get a copy of this, but this is a woman who has set up it's an app on your phone, and this is just where you can get it. And you can Google this or look in the App Store, and it's there. And it is doing these repetitive problem solving kinds of skills for your kiddos. And, executive functioning first came into being to be studied because of dementia and adults that had strokes, and they found that these people were then therefore behaving like a 3-year-old. And so this is where this science started. Okay, how do we find the video? So the video, we'll go through that one more time. So this one here is just a link to the game, and the video is upcoming. Activation is taking all of those things, looking at the whole project, breaking it down into chunks, understanding how much time is going to do that, organizing that time, putting aside my emotions about how overwhelmed I am with this task, and then culminating into activating, finding that autonomy, and that I know that I can do this. I have working memory. I have all of these things coming together, and then I actually take the next step to doing it. Okay. Parent resources. So this is where you're going to find some things that I hope are helpful for you. Next slide. So this is if you click onto this is going to take you to the woman who did the research. And if you haven't used understood.org as a resource, by all means check them out. They have lots of information about different disabilities, how to interact with the school, copies of letters requesting everything from initial testing to grievances. And so it is a tremendous resource. And if you clicked on this, then it would take you to a 3-minute video where this woman who is a premier teacher of executive functioning is talking about it. So you can find that on understood.org. Here's some occupational therapy. Again, this is a link that we're not going to have time to click on because I talked too much, sorry, about executive functioning and occupational therapy that you can do at home that helps build those connections. And so that's a really great resource for us as well. And you can talk to your occupational therapist or your ABA therapist about maybe incorporating some of these kinds of things that are dealing with executive functioning. I love this book. It's a strength-based approach. And with my clients, I really look at that strength-based. And what some people may not see as a strength, if your child has the ability to memorize every single dinosaur's name, what they ate, the sound that they make, like my youngest son, what color their skin was, and every single little detail about a dinosaur, then they have the ability to have a memory about things that is astonishing, and they can do that. It's tapping into that strength and showing them that other things can be just as interesting as dinosaurs, and that they use that strength of that amazing memory, of that amazing ability to pay attention and sit there and organize the tiniest little things into something. And how do we, as the grown-ups in their lives, whether it be teachers, occupational therapists, education specialists, ABA providers, how do we take their strengths and utilize them to teach them in other ways that they are maybe not naturally going in? But we look at their strengths and we approach it that way. Just like we would with your neurotypical people. And sometimes I think we start looking at children and people that are on the spectrum in a different way and look at everything that they're quote unquote lacking instead of the amazing abilities that they have. Well, James was not able to answer a single question. Well, he could say yes or no. And often he said yes because he knew that that was the most appropriate answer that adults wanted to hear to any question they asked him was yes. And he could say, I want apple. But he could read anything because he had hyperlexia. And so he could decode anything. He decodes math. He asked me one time, Mom, I don't know what, this was at the beginning of second grade. And he said, Mom, I don't know what multiplication is. I said, sure you do. I said, if you have 3 and 3 and 3, what do you have? I said, that's 3 threes. That's the same as 3 times 3. It just means you have 3 of the next number, 3 of 4, 3 of 5, 3 of 6. And he said, I don't know. And I said, well, yes, what if you had 3 plus 3? He said, it's 6. And I said, plus 3 is 9. And he said, oh, 3 times 3 is 9. I said, yes. What's 3 times 4? 12. What's 3 times 5? 15. What's 3 times 6? 18. Boom. Because his brain works in that way. He sees patterns where it took me forever to learn multiplication. But once I got it, I got it. But he sees patterns. How do we teach him in the way that his brain is working? And that's what I do as a special education advocate, is look at the way, and this is what the school should be doing. It's an individualized plan. We need to look at the strengths of our children and teach them according to their strengths. Does that make sense? Anybody have any questions? Okay. Next. So these are some books that I like very much on how to teach to the brain's functioning that's already there. These are all available on Amazon. And they are some really great resources. And the more that you understand autism, and the more you understand how it is affecting your child in both the strengths and the weaknesses, then the better advocate that you are for them. The more that you can be educated about how my child learns, the better that you are in advocating when you go to the school and say, well, this is what my child is best successful at. And this is a really great time and a unique time, I think, as parents and certainly as an advocate, that you have the opportunity to really see what is working and what is not working in your child's education. Those things that you've been trying to get the school to start, do them at home and take data down and say, look, I have data that when I sat down and I gave my kid manipulatives, or I did whatever, or I chunked it down and gave them only 5 minutes of information, whatever that is, that resource or that thing that you've been trying to get the school to do that they have been reluctant to doing, and now you can go and say, I did that at home and we had success, the better off you are. And keeping that data, and I have a little form that I'll show you, and it doesn't have to be like they do in ABA therapy, and it doesn't have to be huge, it just has to be some written information about that. Because everything in your IEP should be data driven. Go ahead and go to the next one. So everything in your IEP should be data driven. And if the school is saying that they're going to give a service or do something, you need to see the data behind that. Or what data are they going to collect to make sure that what they're doing is really what is working, or conversely, what is not working, right? Because we don't want to spend a lot of time on things that are not working. So when you get this PowerPoint and you click on there, that's the most recent information as of yesterday on the governor's plan for reopening schools. And again, it's going to look very differently. And I had both of my younger sons that are on the spectrum retained because I could not recreate. The one thing that I couldn't do for them is recreate a classroom. And both of my sons struggle with classroom management, and they're both in gen ed. James has a one-to-one aide 100% of his day, and also in the after school program he has a separate aide. And but I cannot recreate a social environment, and I certainly couldn't do it because COVID, everything was closed down. So even if I wanted to go and give him social interaction with other kids, that was not a possibility. So I had them retained on that basis of classroom management going to be an issue going into third grade, that higher expectation of managing himself, of work, and it being a testing year was not, and that this, while every child was going to be delayed and suffer regression, his was not going to be commensurate with his non-disabled peers. He was going to have a greater retained, held back, that he is going to repeat the same grade that he was before. And so the school wanted to promote him, but we argued, and I think very successfully, that this was not fair to him, and that we could project out that it was going to cause more problems that would be more socially isolating if he was going to yell out in class and rip his clothes off and do some of the behaviors that he's doing. Next. So these are some distance learning things. So this is the California Department of Education and what they're saying, and the things that they're saying that schools need to be doing and giving services and stuff. Special Education Department webinar. This is a bit old. I think it was really kind of in the beginning. It might be late March, early April, but it's a really great webinar if you have a chance to sit down and see what they're thinking from the State Department of Education on what schools should be doing and how this should be handled in this distance learning. This is what I'm talking about when you're keeping a log. And we're not talking about teaching kids new things, but when we go into next year, kids will be graded and there will be an expectation that they will be learning at home. And so it's going to look very different, and it's going to be very different than this year. This year was sort of voluntary participation, and you could decide to do it or not to do it. It's not going to be that way next year. It is going to be like a true home school where you're going to have to show the work and turn it in and all of these kinds of things, which is going to be a huge adjustment for our kiddos, right? And so here's just a simple log that I made. We're looking at the skills that we're looking at, the week of what the IEP goal is, and then what worked, what didn't work, and then on the landscape one is just the things that you tried and where you were successful and where you weren't successful. Or when you go back in, you say, look, I tried to recreate this. And part of your IEP is that they should be giving you parent training. If you don't know how to do these things, then they are obligated. Part of the IEP and part of what they are obligated to do is parent training. And so we need to be asking for that and ensuring that our children are not missing an entire year of educational value next year. This is a great website, A Day in Our Shoes. And if you haven't come across this woman on Facebook or YouTube, she is a phenomenal resource. I look at her stuff all the time, and it's called A Day in Our Shoes. And this is some tips on how to do virtual IEP meetings, Zoom meetings. And that's it. We did it! We still have a little bit of time for questions if anyone has any, or comments, or things that you're concerned about or want more information about, or want to share that you've been successful. What has worked for you? What hasn't worked for you?
I have a question.
Sure.
So a lot of the changes and stuff and the challenges that we're having talking about this going into next year is I work, and I'm not really sure how we're supposed to go from full-time school to I'm now the teacher, and like financially, resource wise, like if we're schooling, I know if like people are homeschooling, there's like some sort of financial benefit to homeschooling, at least.
Yeah.
In
So
some way.
usually homeschoolers get between $3,000 and $5,000 a year to buy resources, to do field trips, all of that kind of stuff. Yes. And they are talking about it on the state level of how do we do this? Are we going to have everybody? I know in some school districts, they're having you sign up. If you are picking that model that is part online, part at home, part online, part in school, that they're having you go to that home school, right? So they have campuses that are already set up to do that, where there's part of the school is homeschool, but then they also go to the classroom and they get taught with other kids. They get that social aspect. They do those kinds of things. And I think they're talking about if that's the route that parents take, that they would then fall into that category of homeschooling and get that compensation. But look into your district, ask about it, push it, talk to your congressperson and let them know that this is what we need to be doing.
Yeah. And she's going to be going to High Tech Elementary, which is a charter. So, and she's going into kindergarten. So it's like she was in a San Diego Unified Preschool, but yeah, I just am like really not sure how that's supposed to work for so many people. Like I'm sure like not everyone is a stay-at-home mom, and all the families can afford to keep their kids at home full time. So
yes.
That's something that we're constantly trying to figure out of what's going to happen for next year. So, and
unfortunately the schools haven't come out with anything concrete either. They've kind of rolled out that, well, what would you like to see? And would you be open to this? And I think what they're doing is they're trying to get as many, some people have found that this has been very, very successful for their kids. Online learning has been a success for their children, especially ones who have issues like anxiety, depression, some of these things. Going to school, social issues around school have been removed, and they're much happier, and they're being much more successful. So I think there's going to be a natural attrition, and that some of those kids are going to decide that this is the avenue that they want to go. I think that there's going to be other ones, and particularly for the kiddos that have IEPs, this is not really an effective option for them. How you can't, as the mom, you cannot be the teacher, the occupational therapist, the speech therapist, the adaptive PE, the social emotional component, and it depends on where our kiddos fall. And so everybody is trying to figure this out, and there are no easy answers. But as advocates, we're really looking at having those services brought to your home. That now we're looking at, is this a in-home hospital placement now. What can we classify these kids as to get them the supports that come in? Do we work with the regional center and get more support to come in for that? Can we start using our respite hours, to help in this way? And so everybody's trying to find a solution, and we're certainly not there. I wish I had a better answer.
Yeah. I was curious if there was more resources, but that helps a lot. And I think she's tried to do remote speech therapy, which is like a complete flop. I think she needs a lot of the like very special, like one-on-one, that interaction in person. So
yeah. And
that for her has been hard.
Have you talked to the regional center about upping her hours of respite and upping her hours of those kinds of things? Do you have IHSS?
So she got approved for respite back in March, and then we still haven't received it. So it's become, I just emailed them again today, like, what's going on? And then I don't know what the IHSS.
Okay, so that's a social program. So it is based on, so it is a supplementary program, and it stands for in-home support services. And it is based on your child's need and your hours of availability. So if you're a stay-at-home mom, then you are available all of those hours. So they pay you, or you can hire somebody, and they hire somebody to take care of your child for a certain number of hours. And it isn't just children. It's what was used a lot with elder care. So it's a way of making sure that the child can stay in the home and doesn't have to go to a day program or some other kind of thing. But so I would reach out to them and get at least interviewed to see. It's $13.50 an hour, and I think it's going up to $15 an hour. And they, it's anywhere from 80 hours a month to 500 hours a month, depending on your child's need.
Okay.
There's also SSI, but that's based on your income. So SSI is taking their future Social Security benefits and assigning them and allowing the children to use them now. I don't agree with that, but if the family needs it in order for that child to be successful and have the things that they need, then that's certainly a resource that is available for you. But I would go first for IHSS. And right now they're doing over the phone interviews about what are your child's needs and stuff. So I would reach out to them.
Okay. I'll check on that one. Thank you.
And that way you could couple that with ABA respite hours. You could couple that with, and the ABA used to say, or sorry, not ABA, respite hours used to not be allowed for you to go to work. But I think that they're modifying that, understanding that there's a lot of people working from home. And in a lot of cases, people don't know when they're going back to work. They haven't gotten an answer for that either. Or their company has said, now you can work from home all the time. So,
yeah. Cool.
So I would look at that, and I would also reach out to your school district and ask them about, would it make sense to you to just go into the homeschool program and get that financial support? Would that make more sense instead of, and look and see what it is compared to what they're offering? It might make sense to say, okay, yep, I'm going to homeschool her and have her go to a shared schooling part of the time, and then I get designated as a homeschool and get that compensation.
Okay. We had our transitional IEP meeting, and High Tech Elementary had no idea what they were doing yet. So
nobody does.
Right?
That I talked to. They know that they're going to have some kind of online, and hopefully maybe something, but I think that they're also looking for that natural attrition. If they can get their numbers down low enough that they could have 12 kids in a classroom, then I think that they're going to go ahead and let those 12 kids go full time. Because there's, in our district, I'm in La Mesa, Spring Valley, in our district, 25% of the people said, I don't want to send my kids back to school at all. I want to do a fully online. So right now they've already lost 25% of the population, which is that I'm sure school's going, yay. Yeah. Yes, we can do that. We have these resources set up for homeschool already. So we know that we can be successful at that.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of resources if you are a homeschool. Somebody comes in and teaches you how to teach the lessons. They give you all of the curriculum, and then you do it. They come and they check in with you on a weekly, monthly or quarterly, and make sure that you're teaching the right things. You have a resource to call. So I know that some people can be very successful at that. I don't know how you do it when you're working full time, but
yeah.
It's all new, and then
Yeah.
the new normal does not feel like anything like normal.
No, but hopefully we'll get there.
Yes. Does anyone else have any questions? Did you have any other questions?
I think that was it.
And you can send me an email or check out my website and or Facebook. Send me a question. My email address and a way to contact me is on my website.
Okay, great. Do you do these trainings frequently?
We're just starting this program, and we're doing it once a month.
Great.
And so that'll come out from Autism Tree again. And so I think, and if anybody on, I don't know how many people are still on. I know some people say goodbye, but if you have things that you want to talk about, if you have ideas or you have questions or you have a topic, let the office at Autism Tree know, and I will put together a program to address that. All right. Thank you, everybody. Alexa, are there any more questions?
Are all good.
All right.
And I will be posting later this week a complete recording of this session, and the PowerPoint will be posted on Facebook and our other social media. So just keep an eye out for that. And that'll have all the videos and links in it.
Thank you, everybody, for sharing your time with me. It's been a pleasure. Again, please follow up. My website is McGowanadvocacy.com, and Facebook is McGowan Special Education Advocacy. So have a wonderful day. If you have any questions, let me know. Thank you, Alexa.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys.
Bye, guys.